Great, we're back up and running. Hopefully this should work now. I'm not 100% sure. So, if you lost me, here we go again. I am sorry for it breaking, but this should fix the quality issue I was having. Just letting people know it changed. Right, go back to the dashboard. Yeah, cool, people are coming back on. Great, that was a lot of fun. So, we've got the front shocks sorted. Just had to jump on my laptop there. The main issue I had at the weekend was these spacers weren't equally divided across my two shocks. So I'm just going to make sure that they are this time. Try and make sure the spacers are of the same size. Yeah, there we go. So we've got 3 on each one and a spring washer and a spare spacer. Always one spare, so let's chuck these back on. Get a truck. So these shocks, they're held on by these little actually they're held on by the spacer that I use in between. So the easiest thing will be to chuck a load of spacers on, get the right amount of spacers on this time, and then start building this up. I think to get my battery to fit, I'm just going to plonk a battery on there and then just see which one I can actually get this through. So if I have that through there, that's going to be quite tight with that battery. Probably going to want to use this Velcro tray to play with things, so I'll squash that in there, and that sits nice and flush on the front. This is quite cool because then my receiver's on Velcro and I have my ESC on Velcro. In fact, the one that I took off earlier, that's on Velcro. So if you feel like you've got the balance of weight wrong, just a bit of Velcro on the different places and you can move it all around and just see what's going on. So if I get that battery on there, then the size of that plate and the amount of Velcro means it's not going to fit. So I think we're going in with having the shocks not too high. I want them quite laid down, and I'll probably end up just putting a Velcro strap across there around there to hold them on. That'll do. Right, let's get this somewhat together. Get these spacers back on. And if you are watching this, thank you. I keep looking over at my laptop because I'm just looking out for questions and things. It's also really weird getting used to like seeing yourself on stuff. And we've just got to chop a zip tie off so I can get this across. Dig out the green Loctite because this is suspension components. We don't want these coming off. And then get those through. Now if you're wondering why my body posts are so wonky, it's because I have the front ones a little bit loose and flexible, and it just allows the body to shift slightly when the truck is rolling upside down a big hill, and tends to stop the issue of smashing shells quite so much. Still managed to smash shells. My new shell that got painted up, that I really like because it's all mad colours, but it's got a few holes in it. Even though I fixed it ready for this weekend, it's got some more holes in it. So I'm just getting these close to being finished, but as I said earlier, probably on a different stream to the one that you're watching right now, because I managed to break everything. What was I saying? Yeah, I'll probably have to do these up by hand. Although, that said, I can't find my 2.5mm because it's a bit of a mess in here because I just wanted to get streaming and start talking. So, I'm feeling a bit lost. Just check I haven't put it in a different pocket. No. Oh, guess I'll just have to use this in the manual mode. So what I'm doing is just loosening the shocks enough so that they'll wobble around. So I've got some lateral movement because they do need to be able to move laterally. The ones on the other side have gone up a bit tighter, so I'm just going to get them tightened up. I'm not one for a super pretty truck, so you'll notice that everything's a bit scratched and bruised, but it just means that you can get your mechanicking time done quicker because you don't have to worry too much about things being pristine. If I was going to make sure they're pristine, I'd probably get some flex tape, get some tape or rubber cement and just put it on these to stop them from scratching everything. Right, they're going back on. Now they've been lifted slightly, but I'm going to try putting them on in the standard place to just see if they'll go in normally. These are the GPM mounts. I'll try and do this one on camera so people can see it. The GPM mounts have got this great 5-position system. I'm using an old iPhone for this, so it's a bit hard to get feedback. They've got this 5-position system that let you set the height of your shocks. I'm just going in the middle one, and I'll show you why in a second. That mostly because I have absolutely slammed this front end, and there's probably no reason to go any lower. If I go lower, I'm just going to lose shock travel. So, yeah, that now actually needs to go on to the next one, because what's happening is we're hitting my panhard bar and the shock is not quite on the bump stop. It's also hitting my steering link as well, which is why the truck's been wiggling. So we actually need to raise this front suspension ever so slightly. I do like to try and have all the travel if it's available. But that tells me what the other issue was this weekend, which was, as it was steering, the body was moving around, and that's because I've got this chassis so low down and the suspension so low that as this steering linkage moves, it drops slightly, and it causes the chassis to twist from side to side. So actually, rather than adjusting that, what I'm going to do is just see if I could put some spacers on the steering ball and mess around with the panhard height so I can keep that super low suspension layout. Right, so that one's in the middle, that one's in the middle, and so my current problem is this steering link. I can see there's some scope for me flipping it the other way up on one end, and that should allow me to get it a bit lower. So I'm going to do that now. I've got it held on. Don't know if you've ever done this with your servo horn, but I have had this bolt come out before, so I've actually got a nylock nut over the top of it, so that it's bolted into both the horn and the bolt, just to give it an extra bit of safety for when it inevitably decides to come loose. Of course, I've got to get that all the way out now. So on the Traxxas ball as well, which has come out a bit too easily, far too easily actually. It's a drag link, it's fine. You've got to make sure that the bigger end is facing down so that your drag link doesn't fall off. Otherwise it's, you know, interrupts your filming or it interrupts your day, and I've just immediately put that in the wrong way around. That is very loose actually, but it shouldn't matter because it will just get captured by that link. You might notice as well that I'm running this on the inner servo horn. That's hole. That's simply because this servo's got so much throw on it that I don't need it to have any more throw. So I just run it on the smallest horn to get the maximum torque. And this is a 60-ish kilo servo anyway. So I don't get stuck. It's a direct drive, so it just draws power from your LiPo. Right, hopefully that steering link shouldn't foul, and it doesn't. So now the panhard rod is, in fact it's the mount just there, the top of that mount, the top of that link is the only thing that's stopping me from getting this any lower. And the great thing about that is I've already shaved down the link, so I've got my suspension super low. And in fact, if I put this to one side, hopefully get the rear in there somewhere, you can see that my belly, when my portals are down, the belly of this truck is actually not far off where the portal axles are. Whereas on a normal TRX, you know, about the most compression would probably be somewhere there. So your belly will be a lot higher. You can do these ones, and you can see that I've wound these all the way down because I've got a pen spring in there, but it's quite a long pen spring. It was stopping me from getting articulation, so I wound these right down to counteract the pen spring. But I'm going to pull those springs out and swap them, which will give me just a little bit more articulation on the rear. Now I've done the front, I should have a nice amount of flex. And in fact, I've got enough articulation for what I would want. I've got a lot more flex than I had previously, and I've got a lot more downward travel than I had previously, which should help on a sort of breakover situation. And the great thing is with the pen spring mod pulling the front down is actually, as you're braking over, it's trying to sort of pull you down. As long as you don't hang up on the links or the flat belly too much, then it goes over. This is a Shapeways printed flat belly as well. Really good printing, but it's wearing through at a bit of a pace, and I have broken off the link mount, although I don't actually use the links there. And I have set my rear links to be quite square. It changes the position of the roll centre. It does affect articulation a tiny bit, but yeah, it's actually plenty. By the time you've got a wheel on there exaggerating the effect, there's more than enough there. I'm not a huge flex person, don't like flex, but you know, we'll see. Right. So yeah, so the front's feeling a bit more damped, a bit more moving around. I keep just switching over between views. So actually, yeah, I can see that, you know, the springs are they're a bit more sprung than it was previously. We're going to pop a battery in there to simulate the weight of a battery, and that gets us down onto the bump stops, so that's good. And then an ESC would be about another, yeah, I think the ESC I've got is 80 grams and the motor's about 80 grams. So what have I got that's about 140 grams? Well, I've got a motor that's actually 130 grams, so that can be my ESC and motor weight. And yeah, that's got me, that's actually, yeah, not harmed me. And by fixing that steering link, that drag rod, it hasn't affected the effective length of it or the geometry of it. All it's done is just change the rods, which changes what the angle is perceived to be, but because the 2 points haven't changed, they're fine. So actually I'm a bit lower down than I was previously, which is fantastic, suspension wise. And yeah, this thing's going to be super low. And to be honest, I might still run my battery on the side, get the ESC on the other side, get the super light motor in there. It's just these batteries are a bit heavier than I think I want. Although, I'll weigh them, because if these batteries are anywhere in the like 140, 150, they'll be fine. But I think they're heavier. Yeah, so the battery's 190, so it is going to make my crawler a bit lopsided if I put the weight down low. So I'll have a think about batteries. I've got some tiny 550 milliamp batteries that can go on there, but the problem with those is they've got XT30s, so I would have to run a pair of them. Otherwise, when the motor draws loads of power when you try to climb up something, it's going to drain themselves. Right, what are we doing? Right, we'll do rear suspension. So these rear shocks need to come off. And sort out these spaces because they're just a mess. Oh. If you have any questions, or if you just want to chat, you know, tough times at the moment, just chuck it in the chat. I think as an experiment, I know it'll probably harm me at the weekend when I go out and try and climb stuff. I know where I'm going. The 2 key obstacles for the weekend that's coming on Saturday are, I think they're 58 and 60 degrees at their steepest. So even if I take the pen spring mod off these rear shocks, it won't affect me for those challenges, because they won't actually be steep enough to cause me a problem. It's when we start getting into the sort of 65 to 70 degrees stuff, I need my suspension to sort of keep up with the excessive amount of anti-squat that I've put on. I've also put an excessive amount of Loctite on that, so I can't get that off. So I will just grab my little piece of card, get this spring out. So all I'm going to do with these is get the spring out, chuck the stronger springs on, and try and make sure I don't put the super strong springs on, so that I've got a bit more strength on the back, and we'll just take it from there. Mostly because as the weight shifts to the rear, you start compressing the rear. So if your crawler on a level surface isn't sort of driving along slightly forwards, I know that's not very scale, but if it's not sort of like that, this is slightly exaggerated, then what's going to happen is when you get onto the tippy flat stuff, the rear suspension's not going to be stiff enough, and you're just going to flop backwards. And then you get to the point where your front suspension's not right, and then that flops backwards, and you know, essentially you just flop backwards. Right, so that's got the spring that I've just missed, so I'll grab that. Right. Do I go without a spring, or do I limit my articulation? No, I'll go without a spring. I'll try it. It's not going to hurt. Right. Also makes it easier to put these shocks back together and means I can move on to the next thing. Hopefully, anyone who's still watching this can tell me if the video's better. I had to kill the other stream, which I put links on to all the groups to try and get some people watching it. But I think I've got adaptive bitrate on, if you know what that means. If you don't, it doesn't really matter, which should allow it to stream smoother. And if it's not, and if this is really choppy, or if you just don't like the sound of my voice, you know, drop a comment in. You know, I'm not offended. I have to watch these things back, and I don't like the sound of my voice, so I won't be offended if others don't like it. So, not sure if I'm doing this in front of the camera. Yeah, so I'm just cycling the piston to get the fluid through, and then with these fantastic Pro lines, just screw the cap on really slowly, and they just bleed themselves. They're just so good. They are absolutely worth the money. I think you pay per pair around about £20 per pair, more than you would for any other shocks apart from maybe the RC four-wheel drive ones, you know, the super scale, super expensive shocks. But they're buttery smooth, no stiction, super travel, big bore, don't leak, perform like everything. They're just fantastic. I really like them, and I put the Traxxas shocks on this because it is based on a Traxxas. This is a Northwest Scalar Designs scattergun, and you know, the Traxxas shocks are my favourite shocks that come with a truck. And I would say if you have any other brand of crawler and your shocks have leaked and you want something that you can rely on constantly, then the Traxxas shocks, you can just rely on them. They are great. But if you've got a few extra quid, then you want to treat yourself and you want something that's like a Traxxas shock but doesn't have any initial stiction and is super smooth, super damped, then go for the Pro lines, because they just are good. Right, that's a soft spring. That's a stiff spring. No, it's not. That's a medium spring, but feels stiff. Now, the reason why I'm going back to a sprung setup is there was a super steep thing that I just about got up this weekend. Went back to Armscliff Crag, and it was so steep that everyone else that tried it just flipped over backwards. I managed to go up it, but the truck was like hopping because the suspension was so pulled down by the Penspring mod that there wasn't any suspension action. So I'm hoping with these GPM mounts that lower the belly and lower the centre of gravity, but then having some rear suspension to stop it from skipping, should allow me to just sail straight up that without any issues. And if it doesn't, then I've just spent the last 20 or 30 minutes yapping to a camera and yapping to random people on the internet about that. Alright, let's have a look for questions. No questions. You can say things, I don't mind. Right. Okay. What am I doing? Right, getting the spring out, that's it. So yeah, if you're doing anything with your shocks, if you put your finger over the bottom of them when you're pulling the piston out, you don't lose any, or you don't lose much shock oil. I've lost a bit through there, but no more than probably a mil. Oop. Now you do lose loads if you then try and just do them straight back up without letting the piston drop. Right, so draw it all the way, get some more fluid in, push it down, cycle it. So when you cycle it and you get that air out, you'll actually find that adding a bit more fluid at the top just helps top up, you know, the bit that the air was displacing. And just tapping it helps those bubbles rise to the top. 35 weight and above, which is what I tend to run quite thick fluid, does have the slight disadvantage that it takes a while for the air bubbles to press through. Cool, right, there we go. This is the last one. Now, one of the reasons why I'm not too bothered about the shock fluid getting all over these is because they've got dirty on the trail and I've not cleaned out the threads, and that shock fluid is just washing off all of the dirt and allowing me to wind up this spring collar a lot easier than it took to wind it down when it was covered in mud on the trail. I probably grumbled and said this to someone at the time, but Proline have this wonderful tight thread which gives you almost an infinite amount of adjustment, they call it, but takes forever to get to the top or bottom if you need to make large adjustments. But if you want to make tiny adjustments, yeah, I've noticed that you can make really tiny, really small adjustments if you feel the need. Right, just making sure that bottom collar's done up properly. There we go. Yeah, that's great. Right, that's a soft spring. They're both soft. That's a standard spring. Great. Right, so we've removed our pen spring mod from the rear. Just not needed. Doesn't matter if the rear lifts, because actually if the rear lifts, it's just forcing the front down into the face of whatever you're climbing anyway. Might matter on descending. This thing does descend better than it really should do, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I've now got to try and rescue these spacers because they seem to be a bit wedged on. So I'm going to get these spacers off and off this one, and then basically count up the spacers and sort them out. In fact, I've just pulled two spacers off and I've just seen that one of the spacers I've removed from the front would allow me to run the same on the back as the front, sorry, the same on each side if I just take one from the other side, and then that will balance out my spacers and I won't have wonky suspension anymore, which I'm sure most of you will agree wonky suspension probably isn't ideal. But it didn't seem to hold me back this weekend, so that's kind of cool. There we go, great. So they're going to go back in the same place that they went before, because I'm not changing the geometry on the back. So we'll do the usual thing, a bit of Loctite. And I'll just get these in place, and then I'll check and see if anyone's asked any questions. No one is, so I'm probably looking a bit daft checking all the time, but you know, just in case someone does ask a question, I want to be ready. I'm running out. Might have to get some more Loctite. Might switch to the paste so I don't have to wait for it to dry. It's just a bit more fiddly to get it to go on, and isn't as good as the liquid. Right, that's great. Anyone? No questions. Oh well. Cool. That's all together. That's all together. So we've got our lateral travel. Let's move the camera towards it. And then these go in the fourth from the bottom. Now, I do have the clearance to put them in the bottom, but then what that stops is the angled skid. So actually, by stopping them from going all the way down, actually retains the angle on the skid. If I do find I'm struggling on anything and I need to lower the skid, then I probably would put them lower, but they aren't at the moment because I prefer that sort of break over angled skid. Great. Not the best at capturing this on camera, but I keep sticking this drill into my hand, so kind of focusing on that. Right, we're all back together now. So, where are we? Right, we've got pen spring mod on the front. So that now has that lovely pen spring mod that stops it from extending too much. But we've still got plenty of flex, we've still got plenty of twist. Rear shocks. Oh, yeah, they don't settle as quickly as they did, which can only be a good thing. Right, we'll pop some wheels back on and then take a look at where we're at. So that's a rear wheel. That'll be a front. Oh, they're a bit chewed up. Put the most chewed up ones on the back and the reasonable ones on the front. Right, let's switch back to out front. Ugh, didn't hold that tight enough. I had left that on drill. That was going to hurt me if I wasn't careful. Good. There we go. Lesson for the day. Don't leave your drill on drill mode when you're doing up wheels. Now these are the Louise Roundy tyres, and I've used them a lot on rock recently, quite sticky gritstone rock. They're holding up way better than Predators do, but they are starting to get a bit chewed up. So I'm not going to change them because the grip is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, the wear isn't as good. But that said, they're probably doing about sort of 4 to 5 hours of rocky climbing a week at the moment, over probably 4 or 5 weeks. So they're holding it pretty well. Right. So when that's completely flat, nice and low. Yeah. and now it's got a bit of spring on the rear. We'll switch back. Now that's got a bit of spring on the rear, that skids nicely pushed forwards, and when it's completely flat with a shell on, that's kind of how it would be all the way down. But now we've got a bit of spring back in it. You know, the main thing to try would be to stick a battery on, stick some things that weigh roughly what the motor and ESC are going to be, so they're balanced on there. So I've got motor and ESC. Let's grab the shell. Because the mistake I've made in the past is setting up my suspension and then forgetting that I'd got, you know, a shell and everything else that needs to go on. So we're just going to pop the shell on the top, and then yeah, I can see the suspension there is being held up a bit more by the spring, so this thing's a lot more forward biased. But then when we lift up the weight, yeah, that's sinking down. The anti-squat will make that lift, so that's really good. But I've got, it's hard to show there, but I've got a lot more skid angle. Got this thing in a clamp. Let me see if I can bring that down. Yeah, that skids. So that's the rear. With everything on it, that skid's angled nice and forwards because the springs are just lifting it a little bit. But yeah, that's looking great. So that's kind of like static. But reality is, once it's gone over a few things, like the best way to tell is just to twist it a bit. Check the articulation. Yeah, that's got a lot more twist than it had. Yeah, great. Nice angled skid. The skid's not far off the wheel nuts, so we've got a nice low centre of gravity on the skid. Yeah, the front's slammed and the rear's a bit further up, so that's, you know, it could go down there, but most of the weight's at the front. So if this lifts, then I think the plan's definitely going to be to have the battery on the front, an ESC on the front, yeah, and then a motor on there. So that's now making me think that my springs are somewhere between what they need to be. Maybe I should have used the softer springs on the rear, but you know, bit of extra articulation on the back should help getting over stuff. This extra angle on this skid, because the springs aren't slammed at the end, is good. And because they're not slammed at the end, hopefully what I won't be getting when I'm trying to get up stuff is that kind of skipping effect, because it's on the bump stops and bouncing, whereas when it's on the springs it should be allowed to move a bit more, so the body can wobble around a lot more as its traction's skipping, and that should retain the traction. And there's me just, you know, dropping a revolver on the table. So I've gone with the Revolver Snubnose 2500 because I don't like ridiculous amounts of torque. I do like to have a nice balance, so I get my torque from gearing. And that's gone straight into the help mode. Hopefully that will come back. Fantastic. Yeah. So next plan is to don't know. Just checking out the wiggle on the front end, trying to work out if it's link related or no. That's good. That's good. There's no bump steer on there now, and that's slammed, so that's not twisting around too much. Great. So let's do a flex test, because you know that seems to be the in thing. Good. I do not have enough flex to sit a tyre on top of a bottle that's the same height of the tyre. That's perfect. So I did not want this to be, you know, 3 wheels down, because it means that it's got too much flex, but it's not far off, which is good. We'll try the front. Turn the camera. Where's the camera? Oh, that's the rear, that's the front. Yeah, try the front. And whoops. Yeah. If it will stay still long enough for me to get a decent shot, because there's no motor, there's no resistance. So that's 2 wheels on the back and 1 wheel fully in the air on a bottle of suspension fluid, give or take. You know, the pen springs not trying to ruin everything. Yeah, that's going to do for me. Flex is overrated anyway. You want an amount of articulation, but you don't want so much articulation that you get your wheel stuck in something, or get annoyed because you've got your wheel stuck in something. Right, I'm going to look up the Traxxas gear chart. Right, I'm going to get this motor on the motor mount. I think that's my next bit. So that's how they come. Nothing special there. Just need to work out what gearing I'm going to do. Yeah, I think I'm going to go a 14-tooth Traxxas, so that should be nice and easy. Now I need to work out where it actually goes. So 14-tooth goes in F. Just going to find F. GH, right. So F would be 3. Great. Okay, pinion. Pinion. Probably in my bag. In my bag of stuff. Got a 12. Another 12, 10, 11, 12 might be a bit too slow. And that is a Traxxas pinion. Great. So we'll go close up again. Hello, Matthew Ward. I'm just about to install the Holmes Hobbies Revolver. Unfortunately, I don't have my ESC yet, because Parcel Force have not yet sent me their ransom note. But when they do, I'll pay it and I'll get the ESC in, and then we can get this build back to where it should be. So I'm going to make sure my wires stick as high in the air as possible so I can keep them away from any drivetrain components, and I'm just going to use a driver to get them started. Then, because this is what holds my motor on, it's going to give it a bit of torque, but not too much. Yeah. Cool. That's a Snubnose Revolver, which has a Castle Sidewinder ESC coming, so I'm not going to crack and put one of my budget brushless ones on. And now I guess we'll get it installed. I just realised this camera's on a short lead. Right, there we go. Not the hardest thing in the world. You look up the right pinion size and everything else and just bob it on. So this is going to use a 14 tooth pinion. So for the 45 tooth, Spur Traxxas have said put it in hole F, which looks about right. I tend to put the motor on first without a pinion so that I can get the plate seated for the motor plate, and then I'll put my pinion on so that I can feel it for any looseness, and that feels spot on. So I'm just going to do up this pinion, making sure that it's attached. Oh, that's interesting. Is that not a 5mm pinion? It's not. So I thought this was going to be a 5mm, but it's not. It's a 3¼ mil, which has caught me out because I'm not sure I've got any Mod 8 14 tooths. Got a 13 in a 32 DP, got a 12 in a 32 DP, got a 17, that would be lively. If I change my gearing to a 13, that could be interesting. Let me just put that in the calculator. 54.69. Okay, still over 7 miles an hour, so we'll go with the 13. There we go. Learn something new every day. That means that I've got this in the wrong place. I need to adjust the position. So I'm just going to get these bolts out and move them round one. Really don't know how I'm going to get on with the Revolver. Not bothered about the extra noise, more bothered about the dirty, grimy, wet conditions that I tend to run all of my trucks in. It's probably going to limit the usage of this truck. I don't want to do that, so I'm keeping the axe system as a backup just in case. Right. Why did I put that pinion? mounted. And that's miles away. So I have either got that wrong or not put my motor plate in properly. There we go, that's better. Right, that's all in. So we'll just do this pinion up. And then I think I need to redo the helicoils that I did for this truck. So I'm just going to grab the kit to do that. So I'm just going to helicoil the bolt on the top of the gearbox and the two that are in the skid. This is just a helicoil kit that you get off Amazon. Not particularly expensive. They are particularly painful to get into. Now they do have specific instructions and I completely ignore them and just wind in the helicoil, provided it's going to fit, because they do have things for you to ream stuff out and squeeze things in and everything else, but I found that you don't necessarily need them. What I do need though is to just open up. So this tool has a little slit in it that allows me to hold the helicoil or get it in there. That was just full of gunk. And then the helicoils probably won't get picked up on camera. They're like compressed springs, and they have a little slatted bit that allows them to sit on this tool, and you just wind them in to whatever you want to apply a thread to. And if it's 3D printed stuff, it's usually soft enough plastic that you can just wind them straight in. And then usually you end up snapping the bottom off. And then you pull it out, and then that's it. I have a metal thread in there. That means you can also then start using Loctite in those if you want to. I'm not going to bother. And that will help things stay nice and tight. It helps reduce the ability or the opportunity to cross thread these. But I say reduce because I'm going to have to do the gearbox, because the gearbox one the gearbox one's stripped a little bit. Now it's a bit hard to pull this out because this is just a really cheap kit, and for some unknown reason they've anodized this whole thing, which means that when you do them the way that I'm doing them and just winding them into plastic rather than fitting them to a metal part, the plastic compresses them a little bit, and then that sticks to the anodizing and just makes it all just a bit of a pain. This one's not going to want to go in because there's another one already in there. But I'm going to wind it down and it'll be fine. It's not worth stressing about these things. I have, however, lost all the little screws I was using to hold in my motor, so I'm just going to grab some fresh ones. That should now allow me to crank this down, provided I can find some countersunk screws to apply enough pressure to hold them in. Which I have in the big pile to one side. Great. Talking about power tools, use this one set on its lowest setting to just buzz that in there. So yeah, so the torque settings set to the lowest just so it doesn't over tighten. That's gone in nice and tight, and this one's going to go in. I'm just going to check, because this is a custom 3D printed skid, it doesn't sort of fit the way a normal Traxxas one would, but I can't see any gaps. All of the plastics together, that's looking pretty good. Right, so I've installed my Revolver. What I'm going to do is, I can't drive it till I've got the ESC, so what I'm going to do is just hold it up, and because I can spin the motor, I can just check and see. So there's a little whir there, and that whir is coming from the fact I'm using a 32 DP pinion with a Mod 8 spur. So Traxxas use Mod 8, and most people who make pinions use 32 DP. 32 DP is a metric measurement. Sorry, it's an imperial measurement, and it's diametrical pitch, and then Mod 8 is the metric one, I think. Might have those the wrong way round, but basically Mod 8 is 31.75 dp, so they're close enough. And because the spur is plastic and the pinion is metal, it'll be noisy for the first 10 minutes of use, and then the spur will be a 32 dp spur because it will just got worn down. Actually, no, it's the other way. Yeah, because it's less. It'll just be noisy. So I could just fill that full of marine grease, or I would do if I was on a normal Traxxas gearbox. But because this is technically an open spur, because you can get crud into the spur through where they've got that lovely drive shaft thing and a little hole in there, if I fill that full of marine grease, it's just going to wear down the pinion, and the grease might spooge out and ruin my motor, which is completely open. Which is interesting. I might have a think about how I'm going to sort that out. Right, I have a bundle of Velcro, which I'm going to use as the world's crappiest battery tray. In fact, that's too long. Is that too long? Try wrapping it around a battery first. So all my batteries are covered in Velcro because they can go on the sides as well. And what I might do is actually solder up an adapter. Instead of trying to balance the batteries on the front, I might just run 2 batteries, so it puts extra weight on. So what weight saving I gain by removing the axe, I'll be putting an extra 200 grams back on. So I'm saving 300 grams removing the axe, and then I could run 2 batteries for when I'm doing trailing kind of stuff, and that would be interesting. That would be really interesting, because I'd not have to replace them as much as I do. But that said, when I'm doing trailing, I get about an hour and something out of a battery. Yeah, that's far too long. But that is good. Right. So I've got two standoffs in here, and I've got a standoff there. So all I'm going to do is wrap this around those standoffs, And then basically those standoffs are now my battery tray. Although I'm probably not going to take it over the top one, just to give it a bit more grip on the battery itself. I've got to be careful because this is an outrunner motor, so I don't want battery wires tickling the motor at all. But I think that is going to allow me to run that battery yeah, that's not going to shift around, that's in tight enough. It's not touching the motor. Battery cable can come back over the top to go into the ESC. These motor cables can come over the top to go into the ESC. And then I can run everything in the front, which makes it super front weight biased. So as long as I set the drag brake to not be too grabby, that should actually go downhill fine, because overall it's super light. The only brass I've got on there are the sleeves for these links, the internal steel. These link mounts, because I wanted metal ones, and brass is 10 grams heavier than aluminium, so why not? And then the hexes are brass, because I like them to be just a little bit softer than steel and a little bit harder than aluminium. Yeah, nothing's too worn out. Everything feels nice and tight. So yeah, just need to work out an ESC mounting solution. I need the ESC. I think what's going to happen is that battery might slide around. So I'm going to get another Velcro strap and just check and see if there's some kind of lateral way I can put that strap on. Yeah, that will be through there, because I don't want it to interfere with any suspension or steering. So I'm just going to stick it to the other side of the Velcro strap that's on there, and then strap that across, and that should in theory stop it from going side to side, but it's still going from side to side. So what can we do? There we go. Just have to wedge it all in with lots of Velcro and not think it through too much, or not overthink it. So I think that main one goes on first. And that one just goes across. Yeah. Simple as that. So that battery is now quite securely in there. It's not wiggling about too much. The end of it's wiggling about a bit. I'll have a look at that. But actually I've just seen it slide towards the motor, and that being an outrunner motor will chew off the end of that battery and cause it to set on fire, which will not be fun. Will not be fun at all. So I think I'm going to think that through. Just check in. Yeah, that battery's fine. I've been picking them up by the leads a bit too much, and it's just where it's packaged in, it's just got a bit pushed about. So I think we're going with battery on the side still. Maybe buy some smaller batteries, who knows. I'll have to think about that. Would have been nice to mount it on here. Would have been nice to mount it on here with the plate on as well. Got one of those optical illusions going on, the panhard bars moving from side to side. yeah, everything is straight, so that's cool. Right, I have to rethink that. So that's the scattergun with the motor the new motor installed, the 14-tooth pinion, 13-tooth pinion, which is quite small, but you know, not the end of the world. Servo's flopping around. Servo needs powering from a JST connector. I do have a balance lead somewhere that I can plug into it, so I might use that balance lead for a bit if I can find it. Yeah, there's one of my balance leads. So to make these, you get a balance plug, put the pins, the wires on the outside, making sure black is matching up to black on your battery, and then that has a JST on the other end, and then when you're needing to power your servo, you just plug the balance lead in, and that balance lead powers your 12 volt or whatever servo. You can also make these leads to work off these other ones. So if your servo can be powered by 7.4 volts, or if it'll take 7.2 volts, it'll probably take 7.4 volts, then if you use the pin that's next to the red one, so one away from the black one, each of these leads gives you a different voltage. So you start with 3.7, 7.4, 11.1 on the outside. So if you pick this one next to the red one and then the black one together, you can direct drive your servo that way. Although you do need to then make a splitter to make sure that your servo doesn't put any power back into the battery. But the way to do that is the same way that the direct drives work, and they just have the signal and the negative and no positive going back to the receiver. So you just create yourself a little Y adapter for that. Yeah, so this will live here for now, which is a heavy battery. So as I say, to balance it out in the short term, I might make a Y plug, which means I need to get a soldering iron and sort that out. So I think I'm done for that. I think my next job is probably either to fit the G-Made, fix the G-Made, which I broke at the weekend. It just randomly spat out a hex nut pin that stops the hex nut from spinning, or do some soldering, or do some links. Maybe if there's people watching this, you can say what you want to see. I've got a collection of aluminium links because I broke loads of these at the weekend. Now that should have a thread on the end, and it quite clearly doesn't because they broke off. If I drill that out, I've got some M4 rod that I can put on, and that will allow me to reuse these links. Now the question would be whether I take the other end off or whether I leave that on, but they all seem to snap at the same end, so I'm assuming that it's the axle end that wants to snap. Let's have a look at how big that thread is. That's an M4 thread, so if I drill that out to 3.5mm, I'll be able to reuse these and get my high clearance links back on super light. So that will be interesting. I am probably going to grab a drill bit now. So live on YouTube, you can watch me drill my fingers to pieces, because I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this. We shall see. I've also noticed that my main camera hasn't died this time, so that's good. Okay, cool. So I've got a load of grub screws, and what I'm going to do is just measure those up just to make sure they'll fit. Hopefully some of these will be M4-ish. Now if these don't work, I might get the Dremel out and just do some threaded rod. But if these are M4, which they are, and they are give or take 16mm, they should do the job. And in fact these ones here, I've just spotted, are 20mm. So I'm going to use the 20mm ones. I'm going to drill 10mm at least into, just turn my heater up, into this link, and then take it from there. Provided I can find a 3.5mm drill bit, which I have. So I'm going to start with 2mm pilot hole and then work my way up, because I just want to see what the aluminium is like. I also have no idea how this is going to work, whether I need to hold the drill and do the bits, or whether I put the bit on the table. In fact, I might try and put the bit on the table and just go into it, so let's try that. Right, so let's go to the double camera view, and let's convert some aluminium links. Can you see that there? Where's the best place for that? Convert some aluminium links to aluminium and steel links. Tell you what, you can have a spectator's view of me sticking this thing into my finger. Will that work? Right, there we go. Let's go. I'm going to hold this down with my hand and drill into it. No, that doesn't want to go. I'm going to grab a file actually, just file it flat and go from there. If I can remember where I put my file. It's not the most flattering view, so I'm just going to grab this file. There's the camera. Just try and get this a bit flatter, because at the moment it's kind of, well, it's a mess because it's broken link. There we go. So that's nice and flat, and hopefully this is going to go in, and if it's not, then we're recording it for posterity. Okay, it's a bit off centre, so we'll try and straighten that up. Yeah. I'll go a bit faster now that that's made a nice pilot hole. set it to drill mode rather than clutch. Right, that's made a nice hole. Of course, as you drill aluminium, it gets nice and hot, and that's not the best. Oh, my heater's so hot, it's burning my leg. Right, that's a pilot hole in that one, at least. So I'm going to find another broken one. Shouldn't be too far. Yeah, there we go, another broken one. And we're going to do the same, try and get the angle better. There we go. So just try and get used to this camera angle. Just got that nice and flat. I've just had a thought. It'll probably make more sense to use some grips and hold this thing. Try and get that angle right. And then drill it rather than do what I was doing earlier and hold it down with my hand, which I'm sure many of you were cringing at. Try and grab it right. There we go, that's nice and tight. So I'm applying very little pressure to try and get the hole started, just let the drill do the work. And then just increase the drill speed, while again not trying to push the drill. And then yeah, just let the drill do the work. Obviously any noise there, any vibration is lost energy. Right. Hot, hot, hot. So I've got a nice pilot hole in there, not the straightest, but we'll sort that out. I'm going to go straight up to a 3.5. Now I've got the pilot holes in. Let's see if I can get these two tapped. Then I'm going to go and make a mental note to go on Amazon and look for some kind of vise. And I'm sure my wife's watching this at the moment, who's going to say don't spend any more money, but who knows? Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right, Matthew Ward. I should watch my hands. Right. So hopefully this better method of holding it with some grips so I don't drill through my hand on live YouTube. Now I'm going to have to go up incrementally. I'm going to see if we can get away with going to a 3mm. That drill bit's wonky, so we'll just get that straight because we don't want that to come loose. So I'm just going to try and mill this out a bit more, and then we'll go up to 3.5 once I can get this going. That's good. Have we got plenty of sidewall? Now, I wonder if I can try and force in. I wonder if 3.5 is in 3 is enough. That might be enough to get that in there. So if I can find the right sized. Yeah, that's becoming harder and harder, so I've drilled it slightly wonky or slightly offset, but we'll see how we get on. Oops. Try not to smash the camera as well. Now, I'm not too bothered about these links getting scratched because, you know, they're already broken. And they are my lower links, so they're going to get scratched anyway. I'm going to see. Okay, how far in is that? So, try and get that right on the camera. We've got a nice hole in there now that we can get a link into. It's not quite perfect, but it's not massively off. I had some calipers somewhere. I think I've managed to, yeah, one wall's 1.5 and the other's 1.9. So this might work, it might not work. I'll do the next one more carefully. Hopefully now, if I get it right on the camera, should be able to get this started. And yeah, that feels like it's going in, so we'll grip that. And we'll see what kind of a thread we can chase in there. And I think what I'm about to find out is that's not going to go in as far as I want it to, because I've not drilled it out far enough. Actually, that's not too bad. Yeah, so it's going to be a case of screwing it in, screwing it back out, screwing it in, screwing it back out to try and chase a thread into there. It's obviously getting harder and harder because I'm kind of squeezing at the same time. But that feels like, that feels like it's in there enough. So I might end up using shorter ones, but how far has that gone in? It's gone in by about 6 threads, so I'll just have to measure what 6 threads is. It's about 5 mil of depth. I think I want to try and chase it a bit further in, so I'm going to try and drill it out a bit more and just see where we get to. I'm just going to check my drill battery as well. Yeah, that's pretty low, so I'm going to get the other battery out and get this one on charge. Yeah, we'll try a bit further. Yeah, drill battery's gone, so we'll just grab another one, put that one on charge. Stanley Max Steel Vice is a nice one. I'll have a look into that. Thank you. Good recommendation. I've actually got a Stanley workbench somewhere as well that I can put it on. Yeah, we've been streaming for 2 hours now and my main camera battery hasn't died. So it looks like the charger I got works. So that's interesting. So if you have devices that you want to run off USB power and you try and reuse an Apple high power charger, it doesn't work. You have to get a non-Apple USB charger if you want to charge at more than half an amp. So if you've got a camera that draws a load of power or something, that seems to be it. So yeah, we'll go a bit further into this one. I'm just going to measure up how much I've managed to drill in by. Only as a rough guide. Looks like I've managed to drill in by about 10 mil. So that means I'll have 10 mil left out for the rod end. So let's see if we can get this in without cracking the side. I think I might go with these shorter ones. I don't think I'm going to get a 20 mil in there. Now these grub screws aren't designed to bite into a rod end anyway, so this is wishful thinking. If you want to do this properly, you would get the kind of screws that are designed to tap in or cut. These are just standard ones, and I'm just going with if they're an absolute pain to get in, they will hopefully be a pain to unscrew. And they're not quite going in straight, but it won't matter too much. Okay. So now I need to find one of the rod ends. Now these are directional, because they're adjustable. Unfortunately, I think they're broken at the end. Broken at the end that isn't the opposite thread, although I might be wrong. So I'm going to steal a rod end from one of the packs that I opened at the weekend. Sorry for constantly adjusting the camera, I'm kind of just trying to keep things going. Right, there we go. And with any luck, that will thread onto there. Yeah, that's threading on fine. So I'm going to measure how much thread I've actually managed to get in. I certainly drilled it out deep enough. I just want to be confident that these are in a decent way. And yeah, they're about a third of the total weigh in. I'm going to try and grab this and just really force that in a bit further if I can manage. I'm not sure how well it's going to bite in, but we shall see. There's only one way to find out. This is good exercise for the arm muscles. Right, yeah, that's great, because what you can probably see is I've managed to get a grub screw in that is almost the same amount of thread as the previous one. So that grub screw's in there by, oh, what's the best way to hold that? By that much. So nearly at the knee, not quite at the knee. So that's one of those. So I'll get that back on, and we might be able to use these again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other one, and then I'm going to put them on, and then I'm going to promise everyone that I'm out with on Saturday that should they break again, I 100% will put the steel ones straight back on. I will not make you stop 5 times in 20 minutes like I did this weekend. Fortunately, where we were, almost every 5 metres, every 10 metres, there was something to climb on and play about, so they weren't too put out that I was sat there messing around with links. But they did start making the joke of I wasn't in any of the group photos because I was fixing links and kept taking the photos without me, which I suppose I deserved. Right, that pilot hole's off centre, so I don't actually know how to correct that. So I'm going to do my best and try and drill carefully. Just check over for any questions. No questions. 3 people watching though, thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm not sure if that's out of pity or out of interest or what, but we'll see. Just bring you back down so you can watch me drill. Right. So I'm going to go down to 2.5 mil and just try and drag the pilot hole straight again. Probably should have just done this in the first place, but we'll see. Yeah, that's coming across. So we'll do 3 then 2, 3 then 3.5. And get one of those in, then install the links, then I don't know, drop me a comment if you've got anything that you've been thinking about or you want to know about, and I can probably do. Obviously fabbing stuff isn't my forte, but I am trying my best. I want to get a solid grip before I get started, so right, there we go. That drill is not gripping. Yeah, that one's not going to work. So I'm just going to pop that to one side, find one of my many other broken ones, and start from scratch. Cool. So I hadn't got too far with that other one, so it's not a great loss. So So we're just going to try and start a bit more careful with this. So it's just dancing around there, so we'll get a little pilot hole in. Oh, hands are getting tired. Yeah, that's going in much better. So just going to see if we can hasty it along, but yeah, that's going in fine. Right, we'll just go for it. Whoa, lost my grip strength there, so we'll swap hands. Checking it, and then I'll move the camera so you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. actually gone a nice way in. That's of course quite hot, so the less I hold that the better. I get one of these grub screws, get it started, and get a rod end on, and then we can pop that back on our crawler, which does mean a little bit of suspension removal, but it's fine. Right, so we're just getting getting that grub screw screwed into this link. They're getting nice and scuffed up, but it's the only time I'm going to need to do it. They will get scuffed up on the rocks anyway, but you know, hopefully I'm not going to take too much of a chunk out. It just seems to be the anodizing. I really need to get a vise for this kind of work. So if you've just tuned in, just repairing aluminium links by wedging in a grub screw, that's decided to hold on to my hex driver. Make a load of mess, play with the drill. You know, all the kind of fun that you can have on a Sunday night. Right, just get this mess tucked away. Right, so I'm going to need to steal another end off one of these links. One. Right, so they're the unused links, unused grub screw. So we get this rod end back on, and this one actually needs 2 rod ends, so I'll have to just steal a rod end from the other end. This grub screw's gone in really wonky, but by the time the rod end's on, it should be fine. They're high clearance links, and with any link, it doesn't matter how wonky that is. I know that looks really bent, because as long as the eye to eye length is correct, the rest doesn't really matter too much, although it is it is offset quite a bit, so I might bend that in a minute. It won't negatively impact it on the crawler, and it's at the end that's got loads of clearance for everything else, so got to remember that this one's actually a reverse rotation thread, so get that off. What I'm going to do is get the previous links off. I'm going to remember that this is reverse thread, even though I've just said it. I'm going to get the previous links off, measure the eye to eye, set these to the correct one, and then install them. So I need that drill, I need that. Now we'll just get those wheels off. Right, let's get this camera back to this kind of height. Let's have a look at the rear of this crawler. There we go. Cool, that's the back done, and then swap over to my other bit. And I've got to get these try and get the camera right. Just to get these suspension rods off first. And then these can come out. Just repeat the process on the other side. And off we go. Oh, and that one's stripped to thread. Lovely. Pull it out with pliers, put it back on with loads of Loctite, and not worry about it. Although I might just put a longer link through and put a nylock nut on it. Right, and these links come off. These links just come off with the nylock nut, although because it's in a bit of an awkward place, it's a bit of a sort of pliers job to get them off. And then hopefully I can use one of these little box screwdrivers. Yeah. Just get that off. Just gets a bit tight around the axle. That's the one with the most room, so the other one's going to be a bit more of a faff. I do have some socket wrenches somewhere, but they're all 5 and 6 mil and not the 5.5 mil that this is, so that's a shame. Right, that's those links off, nice and easy. So we're going to measure these up. So we've got the new links, got the old links, got a big bottle of water as well. Have a drink. Find my calipers. Now these calipers probably aren't the most accurate calipers, but they measure correctly relatively. So when you're measuring one set of links to put a new set of links on, they're actually fine. And in fact, I'm going to measure these sets of links to see if the link change at the weekend caused me any issues as well. So that's 116.6, and that one's the same. So good, they were the right length. So I want these to be somewhere in the region of 116.6, and that one is not. So we'll wind out each end a couple of threads. And that's 116, perfect. And this one that's got the wonky thread should be fine. Try and bend it a little bit. Don't want to do too much because then it will just become another place that it can snap. Yeah, that's straightened out a little bit. Right, that's the reverse thread, which is still messing with my head. Right, eye to eye, eye to eye. Yeah, they're both the same. Great, so we can put our high clearance links back on, or I can put mine on. Don't know why they're ours. Putting the knee at the back like we did in the original live stream. Yeah, that's fine. So I bob this back in. Need a bit of Loctite, which I've lost. Use whatever strength Loctite you want. I'm using green because I don't want this to come loose, and when it does come loose, I'm probably going to sulk and put this truck away for a bit. Although I probably won't, because this truck is driving insanely well. Yeah, that'd be fine. Right, lots of Loctite on this one because it doesn't want to grip. There we go. I'm going to do this one by hand because it's the one that was starting to strip, but should now grip. Yeah, that's better. There we go. Yeah, that's much better. Managed to get a little bit of bite on there. Right, we'll pop the suspension back on. And we'll see how we go. Oh. And we are back with the high clearance links, so I will try not to crash too much this weekend. No doubt I will, no doubt I'll regret doing this, but you only live once. It's not worth worrying about. Well, you only live once that I know about. I could be entirely wrong and get reincarnated as something horrible just, you know, just for that comment, but hey ho. Right, so we've repaired our aluminium, what are they, high clearance links. I'm still not convinced aluminium is the best material for links. I'm a bit surprised, but they were super cheap, about £4.50 for 6 links. The top links have been fine, they've not cracked or snapped. The bottom links snapped at the axle end several times when the truck had a few little tumbles. I'm just going to check for any binding or any catching because I know one of them was on slightly wonky. No, the point to point is absolutely fine, so the wonkiness of the links is fine as long as they're still high clearance. We'll get the wheels back on. So seat that wheel. Right, wheel back on. Right, get the other wheel on. And I'm not entirely sure what to do next. Got my motor on. Got my links done. we are good. So, aluminium high clearance links. Can we go back to the close-up? We can. Motor wires dangling around. They'll be lovely and worn out. So, yeah, so we've got high clearance links. So what you can see there is the links are higher than the drive shaft. So when it's trying to break over stuff, instead of catching on these metal links, which as you can see have been smashed a few times, it catches on the drive shaft, and because that's plastic and rotating, it kind of has less friction than the links. Now these will have extra friction because they're made out of aluminium, but also being high clearance, they should be out the way unless I'm at a really weird angle. Yeah, cool. All that new extra flex is interesting, and not having the front end bend from side to side because the steering rod's knocking everything out of kilter is interesting. Yeah, that can get super low. Right. So I'm just taking a quick look at the steering. When it is in its lowest position, that steering rod is still just touching. So I don't know whether to put a bend in it or not, or just live with it. I think I'm just going to live with it for now. My options are to have a longer servo horn, relocate the servo, or put a spacer under the screw. But I mean, we're already at the point where it's starting to affect geometry a tiny bit, so I think I'll live with it for now. Right, that one's done. It's good to see. Right, let's have a look. What to do now? Probably get the Komodo down. It's probably the Komodo's time for a bit of fixing. So pop a shell on this. So take it off the stand first. Oh, right, we're all done. Time to get the next one. Right, that's very weird because the TRX, for all the time that I've had it, even when it was in stock form, was heavier than this thing, which is a G-Made GSO2. But I'll just pick this up. This feels way, way heavier. So we might lose that other camera, the one that's I'm sort of pointing at now. Might lose that soon because the battery is starting to die on it a bit. So I might turn it off and just have the close-up camera. This has some damage from the weekend. So the shell shell is absolutely wrecked. I've got a video on fixing your shell coming out this week. I'm not sure this one is fixable because these are quite curled and broken. So I might go back to the original shell, although it's only half the original shell. Let's adjust this. Get a bit higher up. Right, so this performed amazing this weekend. This is a GS02. Originally a Komodo RTR. Now definitely not a Komodo RTR. Performs brilliantly. Climbed up some stuff I wasn't expecting it to. Now, I did do a weird thing. I did a pen spring mod on the front and the back of this one, and yeah, like performed stupidly well. Climbed up things that only the scattergun climbed up. Other people couldn't climb up them because they were just too steep. They were just they were trying their best, but they were just getting to the point where the front was unloaded and just tipped back. So we're going to switch the close-up camera and just going to reach over and turn the main camera off for a bit so it can charge up. Right, that's great. So this truck's a fun truck, but I drive it very, very hard. It's quite wobbly and everything else. I actually keep the rear on by having the brace screwed in, but the brace is outside of the shell. So it just holds the back of the shell on, so I've only got 2 body clips. Although, as you can see from the front with the massive holes, yeah, they are quite big holes. And of course I've lost the body pins. So the problem I had with this was try and get a good angle for it. Tell you what, chuck it on a workshop stand as well. Was one of these wheels decided to start, I think it was this one, decided to spit. I'm holding the other wheel. Decided to spit the pin out because the CV joint's not rotating. So I need to check and see if it's the CV pin, but I think it's more likely, yeah, it's more likely to be the pin inside of the hex. So we'll just get this wheel off. And yeah, that's impressive. I've actually got 2 halves and then a centre of the pin that holds the wheel on. It holds the hex still. So that's cool. So they're just lying there. So across across this hex should be a pin that stops a hex from twisting. That pin's now in 3 pieces on my desk. I'm going to dig out those grub screws that I had and see if I've got a grub screw that will replace that pin. I think, oh, they're just slightly too big. Yeah, they're too big. So I think I'm going to raid my spares box and see if I've got some pins somewhere. If not, I'll have to order some of those. I think I've got the screw-in type, but not the others. I've lost my tweezers that I was using earlier. Oh yeah. Actually, I've got a better pair in my bag. There we go. So we're just going to go through here. This is random bolts and things. Tell you what, these might work. I think these are off a TRX. Look like they're off a TRX. No, just too big. Just too big. Carry on hunting. Hunting in the spares box. This isn't where I keep all my spares, this is just where I keep stuff that I've got no home for, so I just chuck it all in a box. Packs of screws that come with things and spare rod ends and stuff. Sure I had some because I got some as spares, but can't seem to find them. If I could find something I could cut down, that would be useful, but it's not looking hopeful. Don't really want to wait the 3 or 4 weeks it takes for stuff to come from Korea either. They're not exactly the fastest at dispatching stuff either. Looking like a an eBay job. Yeah. Well, at least we know what's wrong with it. It's a shame. I normally have those kind of things hanging around, but yeah, that's an easy fix. It's not the end of the world. Again, Louise Rowdy tyres on this, absolutely amazing, really happy. This thing climbed, given all the slop it's got in the drivetrain and how just loose and wobbly all the links are and everything else. Once it gets going, it's just so good, so good. Yeah, it's a shame that like G-Made's hollow balls just wear so quickly. They have like these aluminium ones, but the anodizing seems to come off and wear out your rod ends, and the balls just wear out really quickly. It's just a shame. The rest of it is brilliant. It's got pen spring mod front and back, tiny little springs that compress down to 4mm, so reduces the travel slightly. So the overall shock length is about 88mm, which is about 2mm less than the stock ones. But this thing was climbing up stupid stuff, and the torque twist reduction transmission, where the front and rear diffs turn a different way, that was really cool. But usual thing with a straight axle crawler, just hung the pumpkins up because I'd been driving a TRX all morning and just forgotten about the straight axles. But once I remembered about the offset pumpkins and offset on the front anyway, and took my lines a bit better, it drove really well. The knuckles that I sorted out and put fresh bushings in, they're all rattly and wobbly already, so this is why I get disappointed with the G-Made, because it's just, it climbs so damn well, but at the same time is just so high maintenance and just wears itself out far too quickly. Yeah, don't need to look for body pins because they're lost. This can go back on the shelf because there's not much I can do with that. I'm going to take a look at these ESCs that I've got, maybe, and then yeah, what else? I might take a look at the G500, see if I can put some different wheels on it. Because while I was trying to keep it stock, as we head into the sludgy winter months, there's just no chance of it doing anything, because it's got the sort of pretend road tyres. So, still completely stock, not an issue there. So completely stock G500, we're going to chuck it up on axle stands, and I think I said in the unboxing video that I wasn't sure how these would come off, but I think since I've realised there's a tiny little centre cap that should prise off. And if I can get that out, then I should be able to put these on a different wheel, but I don't know how that comes out, so that's going to be fun. Ah, look at that. Wow, that is scale. So that's just on a little rubber grommet. It's just your standard one. The wheels that I had sealed up also have managed to unseal themselves, so that's fun. There we go, that's all I needed. Get one of those off. Now, these wheels are awesome because they are the standard 4.6 width. Pretty sure they're the standard 4.6 width. Yeah, so they're 4.6 width Canyon Trail size, but they've done like this mock SUV kind of tread instead of the Canyon Trail. So you can't modify these like you can with the Canyon Trail, but they are the slightly smaller height, so the vehicle's lower, which lowers the centre of gravity, which is the main problem with the TRX. Is when you chuck on normal wheels, they're just ever so slightly bigger, and through virtue of being that extra 0.2 of an inch bigger, it raises your centre of gravity slightly. In fact, it raises everything slightly, and just throws off the truck. But the difference is, you can see which one of these two is going to work better on rocks. And if you look at this tread, this is a really hard compound road tread. Great for ripping around car parks, great for hard pack. Pretty good on rock actually as well, as long as it's bone dry. But these are the Louise Rowdies. Yes, they're a bit dusty and muddy, but you know, that's a chunky tread. These, when they get muddy, you spin the wheels, no more mud on them. They spit the mud out. They're amazing. Absolutely love them. So yeah, we'll chuck those on. And, you know, slightly heavier wheel, so we'll lower the centre of gravity. Just going to put them on and see if they're going to rub. What I'm going to try to do is put them on the right way. So I run them with the biggest, widest part of the bar facing forwards on the front, and then I run them reversed on the back, not to reduce the traction on the rear, but it just means that with a tiny bit less traction on the rear, as you're climbing stuff, it gives you almost like a mini overdrive effect. So I've got some of these. These are G-made steel wheels, which have a steel core, unlike the SSD wheels that I run on my other trucks. So the wheel itself weighs about 140 grams just for the beadlock, whereas the SSDs are about 70 grams. And the SSDs, you can get an optional brass ring, but then the weight's getting a bit too much. So we'll pop this on here. Now the great thing about these is they seem to have less offset. So straight away I can see that they're going to clear, which is a good thing. Right, we'll just go straight in with the drill. Oh wow, okay, so these have a really thick hub, because I've got loads of wheel nuts sticking out, or they've either got longer fronts so that you can fit those Mercedes little logos on. Now I could put those on just to look silly, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make sure that they stay in the wheel that they're meant to be in. And we've just got those little sort of sticky out things to trash other trucks. So that wheel, if we stuff it into the thing, that wheel is not going to rub. That's fantastic. So yeah, it's bringing the stance in slightly, so it might make this thing ever so slightly tippy. But who cares? Because we'll be able to climb up stuff, and I would much prefer to be at the top of something tipping over than at the bottom spinning the wheels. And this is so weird, putting, essentially putting winter tyres on my SUV, because this is what I used to do when I had, a big Range Rover. I used to swap the wheels over at this kind of time of year, because I was not wanting to run it on big road tyres, and it ran winter tyres and smaller wheels. Although I had to buy the wheels off a Bowler Wildcat, because they were the only ones in a Land Rover fitment that would fit over the massive brakes that I had on the supercharged Range Rover. If I'd been sensible and bought a diesel Range Rover, then I could have put Steelies on it, but they didn't make 18-inch Steelies that would fit over the supercharged brakes. But what is a Range Rover without a V8 petrol engine? It's the diesel ones, might be more economical, and the guys on Top Gear might say they make a better noise, but I disagree. V8 supercharged, or V8, or nothing. V8 diesels, just, extra cylinders that are clattering around. Although in 2020 diesels are much better, so give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, heavier wheels will definitely change this truck. It wasn't as tippy as I thought it could be, but I think with these wheels on, it's going to be quite nice. The other thing as well with these wheels, which will be interesting, is the thinner track, the slimmer track will give it a better steering radius. So that'll be fun as well. So it'll be able to turn even tighter corners than it can already do. Now, I got this in the full Chelsea Tractor version, and it looks awesome with these wheels. But putting the chunky off-road wheels on, God, I want to paint it military green or black or something crazy. Yeah, I'm tempted to strap the scattergun to my backpack on Saturday, take this out for a bit of trailing, and then when we get to the fun stuff at the top of the hill, a really big hill, get the scattergun out. Because I have said I don't want to modify this. I don't consider wheels a modification because it's quite a simple thing to do. I consider changing up the C-hubs to have my brass C-hubs, or putting brass knuckles on it, or that kind of thing, a bit more of a modification. Wheels and tyres is just, you can try and run scale, but I mean, if you're going to run these in a British winter, that's just going to get you the scale experience of getting stuck, which is not as fun as big chunky tyres that get you really stuck. Cycle those shocks a bit. Yeah, that looks alright, doesn't it? That looks like well, yeah, proper tippy trail truck. I'm even running the standard shock oil, which is fantastic for trails, but a bit crummy for rock climbing. You'll also notice, as I was saying earlier, the fronts. Well, basically, to get this thing to perform, I've just unwound the shocks all the way from what they would be standard. Now the rear shocks are a bit soft. Sorry, still a bit stiff, so they're kind of expecting a battery to be in there, but I run the battery in the front. But it means that this thing's like quite forward biased and does climb really well. I am actually, though, having seen how much it tips forwards, I am going to just wind the front a little bit, just to balance it out slightly. Now this is easier said than done because it's got these wonderful fenders that also make this job really quite difficult. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go down about 10 full threads. Just because this is more of a trail truck, I don't want it bouncing off the bump stops. If I was crawling, and if I get something that I'm getting a bit stuck on, then I probably will unwind them so that it does tip forwards a bit. But that feels like it's a bit more level. Probably the wonky camera angle won't help there. Yeah, that's the inside of a TRX. All the TRX 4s look like that most of the time, hopefully. If not, then they're not being used enough. It's got the standard sliders, but they've got this sort of pretend cap on them, but underneath the cap is actually a standard slider. But also you've got some exhaust pipes that you can use as a slider as well, and you can catch these up on rocks and, you know, have the true scale experience of how bad an SUV actually is. Yeah, they're good. The sliders are supposed to capture the body slightly. After a couple of rolls it does pop out, but most of the time it does capture. I don't even use this battery tray. I've used this front battery tray. That's why there's some Velcro here. You can put stuff here. Now if you're out and you're just trailing and you're not trying to climb up anything too steep, chuck your battery in the back, have loads of fun. I'm probably going to chuck a 4000 milliamp battery in the back and just run it for the traily stuff. But if you want to climb up stuff, put your battery in the front, and that shifts all of that battery weight to up here, then it runs much better. And in there I'm running like shorty LiPo high voltage packs, which run really well. But yeah, this is probably going to have a quite chunky battery in it, but I might change my mind. I'll probably end up chucking a normal battery in the front. And I love this this front bumper, although I'm not sure, like some people have managed to get a winch on here. I'm not sure how I'll mount a winch, but I do want to put one on, and I'll just grab my little winch. Oh. So I've got one of these, which is an Eddie designed Eddie winch, and it's kind of like, well, try and do it in front of this camera. It's kind of like just a tape measure kind of thing, but with a bungee cord as well. And the pull's actually reasonably consistent. It's you know, there's a little bit of notchiness to it, but I've been saving it for a review. But if I can find a way to mount it on this, which I'm not sure I can, but if I can find a way to mount it on this, I probably will, because this truck, all this truck suffers with is the usual TRX lifty shocks at the front, and so when it reaches about 60 something degrees, it starts to lift up and fall back. If I can get that to mount in here somewhere, I don't want to do it with hot glue, I don't want to do it with epoxy, don't really want to cut my bumper too much, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. But if I can get that to mount in there somewhere, then I'll have a little winch, which would be great. But this has a different front bumper. So it's got a G500 specific front bumper, and under here, this is great, it's got this rock plate underneath. Now, it is made out of plastic, but it slides really well. You can see I've used it loads, and that's that solid bumper. It's just behind the Lexan, but it's great because you just drive straight into something and then it pushes you up, and you never hit your steering links because they're behind the wheel. So you've sort of used it to bump up, and then it goes up those wheels. It's great. It's really cool. Like that. Was hoping that when I got this out, you know, magically there would be somewhere to put it, but there isn't. I do have the front bumper from a Sport though, but if I get the front bumper from a Sport, then I'll have to cut the shell, and I'm not willing to do that right now because I do like this the way it is. So Eddie, I will review your winch at some point when I can find somewhere to put it. If I can find somewhere on the scattergun, it'll go on the scattergun. But the only place I can put it on the scattergun is underneath the servo, and that would mean that every time I bump up something, it's going to get smashed off, so that would be bad. Right. Get those pins back in. Oh dear, just fired a body pin at my bag somewhere. That's going to be fun to find. Can't seem to get my body pins in for some reason today. Oh good, landed on the floor. Right. Right, we are back together. I'm looking at the wrong camera, I'll look at the right camera. We're back together. I've done, well, I've tried to fix the G-Made. I've got the scattergun all set up with just a front pen spring mod, not the rear. Got thicker, stronger springs on the rear, which is what I wanted to do. I've tested out the new dual camera streaming thing, which is quite cool. G500's got some new shoes for the weekend. Louise Rowdy tyres. These are on dual stage foams. Nice thin wheel as well. So the foam doesn't shift or anything. This truck does like to go fast, or I like to go fast with this truck. We've got lots of flex. Yeah, we've got lots of flex. That's good. We're not rubbing. I think it'll just nibble the fenders slightly, but I'll just put the stickers on if I need to. It came with some carbon fibre pretend carbon fibre stickers, so they can go on if they need to. Otherwise it'll be fine. Actually, yeah, it looks like out the box they've got the panhard link not quite. Oh no, it's just because of how low it was sat. Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, because it shifts the side with the panhard link. Right, those shocks are happy. I am happy. I think that's the end of it. If you've made it all the way through this very long stream of me rambling, thank you very much. Otherwise, have a fantastic evening, and I hope to see you all out on the trails at some point when this silly nasty bug is gone.